Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Ultimate Russia Guide. This is very B-type antenna, and I think it's probably one of the easiest antennas that we've covered so far, or definitely easier than A and B type, so yeah, maybe just one of the easiest antennas in general. There are 4 main clusters, and we're going to go over the 4. We're kind of going to ignore all of these here, which, if you get them, I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know how to differentiate them, and frankly, there are too many of them, so yeah, and we're going to ignore these tiny clusters here and here as well. But the 4 main clusters, we have the southwest of Moscow cluster, or I guess just south of Moscow. We have the Krasnodar cluster, and then we have the Kurgan cluster, and then lastly, we have the Krasnoyarsk cluster. Now, all of these regions are very differentiable. Maybe sometimes you could have 50-50s between them, but I think it's generally pretty easy to differentiate them. So the first one we have here, actually, let's go over how to identify the very B-type antenna first here. So as you can see, we're going to full screen here actually. Just like B-type, the little clump here is on the left of the antenna. And if you have not seen the B-type video, make sure to go see that first. But in this variant, the clump on the left is actually much bigger and more noticeable than it was in B-type. Now, sometimes you can have problems where you're like, okay, I can't tell if it's B-type or very B-type. The thing you look out for is the smudges in the sky. So as you might remember, in B-type, we had sky smudges, basically, like camera smudges. But look at this here. We have no camera smudges here. You can't really find any if you look in the sky. I think there is one small smudge, technically, for it, but it's very hard to see. And generally speaking, there aren't going to be any smudges. So that's one good way to figure out if it's very B as well. All right, and now it's time to get into the main clusters here. So the south of Moscow cluster is in summer coverage, and it's basically what you would expect. It just kind of looks, well, like a normal Russia round, I guess. Has birch trees, has forests, some open spaces. We're actually getting a lot more open spaces than I thought here. But I'd say it's a very standard looking Russia round, I guess, is how I describe it. And this won't be the case for the other locations. The other locations will look very different. This is in May coverage, interestingly. So I guess there is some kind of seasonal meta here as well. You can barely even tell this is May in my opinion, but yeah, if you see a very forested round, just looks kind of like a normal Russia. And you'll probably have some western grass as well. And as I described last video, western grass just looks a lot more chaotic, has a lot of more stuff in it. It's not very organized looking, right? So, those are some tips for this little region here. But frankly, it just looks so different from the other regions. For example, we'll go into the Krasnodar cluster here. Now, one thing that makes Krasnodar very free is that it's in August or September coverage. I think a lot of it's actually in September. Yes, here we go, September coverage. So you're going to see a lot of orange leaves. Weirdly, they're not the orangest here. But one thing about the south in general, as I've said before, you never see any birch trees in the south unless they're planted. So we don't see any birch trees here. So even if you can't tell that it's in September coverage, you can still get this. Although there are probably some better locks where you can tell, like these leaves, for example, are quite orange. So if we look here, quite orange leaves. We have a lot of agriculture down here, right? A lot of agriculture. A lot of sunflowers that we might see in other locks, but don't see any here. But yeah, basically that's just going to be fall coverage. Pretty flat, pretty agricultural. Naturally, we do have some sunflowers right there. Look at that. Very beautiful there. But yeah, I'd say this region just looks distinct because of the fall coverage, because of the flatness, agriculture, lack of birches, that kind of stuff. All right, and now we're going into Kurgan here. So the Kurgan cluster basically has that eastern grass that I was talking about. So this is actually not the greatest example, weirdly enough. I feel like this grass is a little bit messy. Let me find a better example here. Maybe that's a better example. It's not the greatest. I feel like usually I can find examples pretty quickly here. This looks kind of, yeah, this is kind of eastern, I think. So if we take a look at this grass, it's kind of organized, has less stuff in it overall. Although I feel like there are better examples even, but yeah, generally speaking, going to be very green, very organized, not as much stuff in it. Kurgan is very flat, and it's very open as well. There aren't as many forests or trees in general. I'd say it's a lot more open. Like a lot of these locks that you can click on, they're going to be very open. So yeah, I think that's going to be a good tip for Kurgan there. Surprised I'm not finding as much typical versions of eastern grass here, but yeah, I guess this is perfect actually, right here. So as I said, it's going to be very green, very organized, very open, right? So all great tips for Kurgan. All right, and the last clump we have here is Krasnoyarsk. I have gotten so many wins on duels in Krasnoyarsk. Basically, I'd say it's a really, really recognizable landscape. So if we look at it here, we'll see it's very hazy for one. You'll notice there's a lot of haze. It's very hilly as well. So you got haziness, hilliness, and then, if you, honestly, from landscape alone, I think you could get this. But you could, if you wanted to, look at the antenna as well, say, oh, it's very B-type, and then it's Krasnoyarsk. But yeah, if we look around, just very hilly, very hazy, and this haze stays pretty consistent throughout everything, basically. So if you get on here, still hazy, still fairly hilly. If you get a city, you're probably in Abakan. You'll see here, there's still that classic Krasnoyarsk haze, but we're on a bridge and we're in kind of a city area here. So this is 5Kable essentially. If we go on this road here, the haze stays consistent here. There's still more haze. And yeah, I think it gets a little less potent as you go further north. In fact, this road actually, I will admit, this road could cause problems. Because as you see, it is like forested, although this is a lot of pine trees. But yeah, it is forested, and this would be maybe a little bit tough. Like you could have a 50-50 between this and like Moscow, for example. But maybe just think about the fact that this is a big road and that it's generally going east to west. And then that might help you differentiate it from Moscow. But yeah, it's not guaranteed. This is probably the only road that could cause problems. And I'm sure there are other 50-50s that can arise in these clusters as well. But yeah, overall, I think these clusters are quite recognizable. And hopefully this video helped you guys with your very B. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something today. Next video, we'll be doing C-type antenna, which is significantly harder than very B. So stay tuned for that. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.